When they got there, they stood outside his palace for 5 days and harassed him to get those graven images and banners down. So he ordered his soldiers to surround the Jews in the center of the amphitheater with swords drawn and threatened to chop off the head of every Jew if they didn't stop it. To his shock and horror, the Jews, and to their credit, bared their necks and said, "Do it." The background on Pilate. Welcome to Bible Study Hub. I'm Ann Wiggins. Let's get going in John chapter 18, verses 33 to 38 is where we'll be today, and I'll be reading from the Legacy Standard Bible. So here we go. John 18, 33 to 38 says this. Therefore, Pilate entered again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you saying this from yourself, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests delivered you to me. What did you do?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be delivered over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Therefore, Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You yourself said I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" Well, as we said over the past couple of days, the Jews have a massive problem that they're trying to solve. They have an innocent man that they need executed. They've satisfied their own law through illegal proceedings and witnesses. He's a blasphemer according to them, and that qualifies him for a stoning death in Jewish law. But the problem is the Jews don't have sovereignty over themselves at this point in history. The Romans are the rulers. They rule over the whole Roman Empire, so they're in charge, and only Rome could legally execute a criminal. Also, Rome does not give a rip about Jewish law and blasphemy against their own God. They don't care about that. So the religious leaders have really only satisfied their own judicial system. They haven't even scratched the surface with Rome. They want Jesus crucified. And so they've got to get Pilate to step in and follow their orders. So here's how Pilate is feeling and why he, against all rational thinking, proceeds with the wishes of the Jews. Here's the background on it. Pilate ruled over Judea, this area, from about 26 to 36 AD. Now, he had been given strict orders to keep the peace of the Jews in his region, which was no small feat to do. In 26 AD, as he established his authority, he rode into Jerusalem with banners. On the banners were poles. On top of the poles were golden eagles. And on top of the eagles was a bust of Caesar's image. When the Jews saw this, they were horrified because Caesar was considered a deity to be worshipped in the Roman world. And so to them, that was riding into Jerusalem hauling idols. Well, Pilate ends up back in Caesarea soon after this debacle. And to his dismay, about 1,000 Jews walked about 75 miles from Jerusalem up north and up the coast to Caesarea to confront Pilate. That would be like an hour and a half by car. It took them days. When they got there, they stood outside his palace for 5 days and harassed him to get those graven images and banners down. Pilate was like, "Sorry, not doing it, don't care." But the Jews wouldn't stop. So he finally got sick and tired of it. And he said, "All right, meet me in the local amphitheater and I'll address you there." So he ordered his soldiers to surround the Jews in the center of the amphitheater with swords drawn and threatened to chop off the head of every Jew if they didn't stop it. To his shock and horror, the Jews, and to their credit, bared their necks and said, "Do it." Oops. Pilate just realized, if I go chopping off the head of about 1,000 defenseless Jews, there will be mayhem in Judea, and Caesar will probably have me executed. He can't do what he threatened. He is totally impotent. So he told his soldiers to stand down, and he told them, "Go remove the banners with the bust of Caesar on the top, get rid of all of it." And that day, the authority and chain of command was established, but Pilate wasn't at the top of it. He was humiliated. The Jews had some dirt on him now, and they showed him that they weren't afraid. And now it's Jews 1, Pilate 0. But that wasn't the only thing he did. There was more. He wanted to build an aqueduct to cross the Judean desert to fill up some cisterns of water in Jerusalem. Well, that aqueduct was going to be about 40 miles long. That's a lot of aqueduct, and he didn't have the money to do it. So he thought to himself, no problem. The Jews have a temple. There's money in there. I will go get some money out of the temple, and I'll just use it to pay for this lovely aqueduct, and they'll be so thrilled with that. Well, they weren't thrilled at all with that, as you can imagine. They were outraged, and he totally underestimated how furious they were going to be. So in their minds, they thought he had plundered the temple, taken the money that they had given to God, and tens of thousands of Jewish men pleaded to Pilate to stop it. So while some were protesting peacefully, others decided to riot, and the rioters were just hurling insults and heaping abuse on Pilate, made him mad. So Pilate got a lot of Roman soldiers to dress up in Jewish clothing so they could kind of infiltrate the mob. They had clubs and bats, and when they got the signal, Pilate ordered them to disperse, and they wouldn't. And so he let them know, take out the bats and start just absolutely going after the Jews. Well, they weren't supposed to actually annihilate the whole crowd, but it got out of control, and they ended up massacring thousands of unarmed Jews. So it didn't go according to plan, and the optics were horrendous for Pilate. Of course, word gets back to Caesar, and Pilate got in big trouble for being cruel and unjust and handling the situation horribly. Jews 2, Pilate 0. The third time, and this was recent to what we're reading about here in the Gospel of John, he had put shields with Tiberius Caesar's name on them and hung them in a palace built by Herod the Great, which was really close to the temple. It was kind of like a hotel for dignitaries. Pilate used it, some others used it, and the Jews considered it to be theirs because it was on their land. So when he put these banners up, the Jews lost their minds and said, or not banners, but shields, when he put the shields up, lost their minds and said, Pilate, you got to take the shields down. Pilate says, I don't want to. And everything just went crazy again. So Herod gets in on it. He gets mad. He drafts a letter to Tiberius Caesar. He tattles on Pilate, and Caesar is furious at Pilate. He sends him a very terse letter back and says, you get those pagan shields out. So Herod and Pilate actually hated each other because of this, but we'll find out at the trial of Jesus, they actually become friends because they're both against Jesus. So this time, with no bloodshed, the Jews got what they wanted again. It's Jews 3, Pilate 0. All these conflicts are religious in nature, which is why it's really important to this story. Pilate is on very thin ice with Rome, and the Jews know it. They have him over a barrel. And this is the reason why Pilate, sick and tired of the Jews not wanting to kill an innocent Jewish man who seems perfectly harmless, proceeds with this sham trial. He has no cards left to play. He is out of options. It's either going to be execute Jesus or probably be executed himself, because he knows the Jews will go ballistic if he doesn't do what they're telling him to do. So even though Pilate questions Jesus here and finds there is no problem, there is no guilt, I find nothing wrong with this man, he can't risk not doing it anyway. It's either Jesus or it's him. And we're going to find out that, unfortunately for Pilate, it's Jesus. He doesn't take the fall. He's not willing to put his own neck out there. He lets Jesus go down to save his own hide, which in the end costs him so dearly that in a few years he will actually take his own life. Never good to come up against God, but I think it is helpful to know the background information so you can understand why, not that it justifies it, but why Pilate did what he did. Well, I hope that was interesting to you today. Thanks so much for being with me on Bible Study Hub. Lord willing, we'll see you back here tomorrow. 6 a.m. is when our videos go live on Facebook and YouTube. Until tomorrow, have a great day, and I will, Lord willing, see you back tomorrow.